The microphone was live, the cameras were rolling, and 15 million people were watching on television when music industry executive Richard Hartwell stepped to the podium to present the Lifetime Achievement Award. What he said next about Bob Marley would shock the entire music world, but Bob's response would change the man's heart forever and create one of the most powerful moments in award show history. Los Angeles, California. September 14, 1979. The American Music Awards ceremony was taking place at the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion, and the atmosphere was electric. Music's biggest stars filled the elegant auditorium: Diana Ross, Stevie Wonder, Paul McCartney, and dozens of other legends. But tonight, all eyes were on one particular recipient: Bob Marley, who was receiving the International Artist Lifetime Achievement Award for his contributions to world music. Bob sat in the front row, wearing a simple black suit, his dreadlocks neatly arranged, looking calm and dignified, despite being one of the few black faces in the predominantly white industry gathering. This was 1979, and the American music establishment was still struggling to accept reggae as a legitimate art form rather than just island music. The presenter for Bob's award was Richard Hartwell, a 58-year-old executive from Atlantic Records who had been in the music business for 30 years. Hartwell represented the old guard, a man who had built his career during segregation and still harbored attitudes that belonged to a bygone era. As Hartwell approached the podium, he carried himself with the arrogance of someone accustomed to power. He adjusted his glasses, looked out at the audience, and began what was supposed to be a standard introduction. "Ladies and gentlemen," Hartwell began, his voice carrying clearly through the auditorium, "tonight we present an award to an interesting artist from Jamaica who has managed to make quite an impact on our industry." The subtle condescension in his tone was already noticeable, but what came next would become one of the most shameful moments in award show history. "I'll be honest," Hartwell continued, his words being broadcast live to millions. "When I first heard reggae music, I thought it was just noise from the islands. Simple music for simple people. But I suppose even they can create something that catches on with our youth." A shocked silence fell over the auditorium. Several artists in the audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Stevie Wonder shook his head in disgust. Diana Ross audibly gasped, but Hartwell wasn't finished. "Now, we're supposed to give this Lifetime Achievement Award to Bob Marley, and I have to ask him, lifetime achievement for what? Making music about smoking marijuana and stirring up political unrest. Teaching our children to rebel against authority." The cameras caught Bob's face during this speech. He sat perfectly still, his expression calm, almost serene. There was no anger in his eyes, no defensive posturing. He simply listened with the patience of someone who had heard such ignorance before and understood that it came from fear rather than malice. Hartwell held up the Crystal Award. "But I suppose in today's world, we have to recognize all types of contributions to music. So here's your award, Mr. Bob Marley, for whatever it is you think you've accomplished." The presentation was delivered with such obvious disdain that many in the audience wanted to walk out. Several artists were visibly angry, but everyone waited to see how Bob would respond. Bob stood slowly, walked to the stage with dignity and tact, and accepted the award from Hartwell's reluctant hands. The two men stood together at the podium for what felt like an eternity. The older white executive and the young black Rastafarian, representing two completely different worlds. Bob looked at the award in his hands, then at Hartwell, then out at the audience. When he finally spoke, his words would be remembered for decades. "Thank you, Mr. Hartwell," Bob began, his Jamaican accent warm and clear through the microphone. I want to thank you for this award. But more than that, I want to thank you for showing me something important tonight." Hartwell looked confused. This wasn't the angry response he'd expected. "You see," Bob continued, "you've just demonstrated why the world needs reggae music, why the world needs messages of love and unity. Because what I heard in your words tonight wasn't evil. What I heard was pain." The audience was captivated now, leaning forward to hear every word. "Mr. Hartwell, you spoke about simple music for simple people. But let me tell you about those simple people. They are sugarcane cutters who work 18 hours a day under the burning sun to put food on their children's tables. They are mothers who walk 5 miles to fetch water so their babies can drink. They are fathers who fish in dangerous seas to feed their families." Bob's voice grew stronger, more passionate, but never angry. "These simple people, Mr. Hartwell, they know something about life that money and power cannot teach. They know that love is stronger than hate. They know that music can heal wounds that medicine cannot touch. They know that one heart, one love, one song can change the world." Hartwell's expression was changing. The arrogance was fading, replaced by something he wasn't prepared for: recognition of his own ignorance. "You said reggae teaches rebellion," Bob continued, "and you're right. But not rebellion against authority. Rebellion against ignorance. Rebellion against prejudice. Rebellion against the idea that any human being is less valuable than another because of the color of their skin or the place they were born." The auditorium was completely silent now, except for Bob's voice. "You asked what I think I've accomplished, Mr. Hartwell. Let me tell you. I've helped a generation of young people believe that they matter, regardless of what the world tells them. I've given voice to the voiceless. I've reminded people that before we are white or black, rich or poor, American or Jamaican, we are human beings sharing the same earth, breathing the same air, hoping for the same things for our children." Bob paused, looking directly at Hartwell, and what he said next would break the man's heart. "But most importantly, Mr. Hartwell, I've learned to respond to ignorance with education, to hatred with love. Because you see, sir, you are not my enemy. You are my brother who has forgotten what brotherhood means." Tears began forming in Hartwell's eyes. 30 years of industry power, of looking down on others, of building walls between himself and people he deemed inferior. And here was this Jamaican Rastafarian calling him brother. "I don't expect you to understand my music tonight, Mr. Hartwell, but I pray that someday you'll understand my message. We are one people, one love, one heart. And until every person on this earth can stand in dignity and be judged by the content of their character, rather than the prejudices in other people's hearts, the struggle continues." Bob raised the award above his head. "I accept this award not for myself, but for every musician who has ever been told their voice doesn't matter. Every artist who has been dismissed because they don't fit into someone else's definition of acceptable. Every dreamer who has been told to go back where they came from." The audience erupted in applause, but Bob wasn't finished. "And Mr. Hartwell," Bob said, turning to face the now openly weeping executive, "I want you to know that despite the pain your words caused tonight, I forgive you. Because forgiveness is the only way forward. Hatred only breeds more hatred. But love, real love, has the power to transform even the hardest heart." By now, Hartwell was sobbing. 30 years of buried guilt, shame, and recognition of his own prejudice came pouring out in front of 15 million television viewers. Bob did something then that no one expected. He embraced Hartwell. The image of Bob Marley holding a crying Richard Hartwell became one of the most iconic photographs in music history. Two men from different worlds, different generations, different races, united in a moment of human recognition and redemption. "I'm sorry," Hartwell whispered into the microphone, still audible to the entire audience. "I'm so sorry. You're right. I've been carrying this poison for so long, I forgot what it was doing to my soul." Bob held him for another moment, then stepped back. "Mr. Hartwell, today is the first day of the rest of your life. What you do with that gift is up to you." Bob left the stage to a standing ovation that lasted 12 minutes, but the real impact was yet to come. The television footage of that exchange was replayed hundreds of times over the following weeks. Bob's speech was transcribed and published in newspapers around the world. Radio stations played it alongside his music. It became known as the Brotherhood Speech, and it changed conversations about race, dignity, and forgiveness throughout America. But the most profound change was in Richard Hartwell himself. Within a month, Hartwell had resigned from Atlantic Records. He used his resignation letter to publicly apologize for his years of prejudice and his treatment of black artists. He donated his substantial savings to establish the One Love Foundation, providing music education and opportunities for underprivileged youth. Hartwell spent the remaining 15 years of his career working with small, independent labels that specialized in promoting artists from marginalized communities. He became one of reggae music's biggest advocates, helping to bring dozens of Jamaican artists to American audiences. When Bob Marley died in 1981, Richard Hartwell was one of the thousands who attended memorial services around the world. At the Los Angeles Memorial, Hartwell spoke about the night that changed his life. "Bob Marley taught me that the opposite of ignorance isn't anger," Hartwell told the crowd. "The opposite of ignorance is education, and the opposite of hatred isn't revenge. The opposite of hatred is love. Bob didn't destroy me that night when he had every right to. He saved me." Hartwell lived until 1998, dedicating the last 2 decades of his life to racial reconciliation and music education. When he died, his funeral was attended by hundreds of musicians whose careers he had helped launch, many of them artists he would have ignored or dismissed before his encounter with Bob Marley. Today, the Richard Hartwell Redemption Fellowship provides annual scholarships for young musicians from underserved communities. The fellowship's motto, taken from Bob's speech that night, reads, "Before we are anything else, we are human beings sharing the same earth." The Dorothy Chandler Pavilion has a small plaque backstage that commemorates that night in 1979. It reads, "In memory of the evening when hate met love, ignorance met wisdom, and one man's courage to speak truth changed another man's heart forever." Music historians consider Bob's response that night to be one of the most powerful examples of grace under pressure in entertainment history. The speech is studied in conflict resolution courses, quoted by civil rights leaders, and continues to inspire people around the world who face prejudice and hatred. But perhaps the most important legacy of that night is the lesson it taught about the power of responding to hatred with love, to ignorance with patience, and to prejudice with the simple reminder that beneath all our differences, we are one human family sharing one earth, deserving of one love. Years later, Bob's son Ziggy would say, "That night, my father didn't just win an award, he won a soul, and he showed the world that the most powerful revolution isn't fought with weapons or anger. It's fought with truth, dignity, and love that refuses to be diminished by other people's ignorance." If this story reminded you that love really can conquer hate, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to remember that grace and dignity are always more powerful than anger and revenge. Have you ever witnessed a moment when someone's kindness changed a heart that seemed hardened? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to ring that notification bell for more incredible stories about the moments when music brings out the best in humanity.